paralysis in Mississippi.
Common people leading the charge for change.
The legacy of 1964 Freedom Summer by Allie
and Allie Watkins.
1964, the South. How would the momentum of the civil rights movement reach the state of Mississippi, a fortress of segregation?
Jim Crow laws.
The Ku Klux Klan.
Extreme violence against African Americans.
Complete social paralysis.
In 1964, Mississippi had recorded only 6.4% of eligible African Americans registered to vote, even though African Americans made up over 50% of Mississippi's population.
This was the lowest percentage
of registered African Americans in the nation.
What was holding Mississippi back? Bob Moses, Mississippi Field Secretary for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, also known as SNCC, came up with the controversial idea that could potentially increase African American voter registration in segregated Mississippi. The 1964 Freedom Summer Project.
Through the collaboration, power, and knowledge of SNCC, the NAACP, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and the Congress of Racial Equality, one unified committee was formed. The Congress of Federated Organizations,
COFO, empowerment of African Americans, came through the leadership of common people who chose to enter Mississippi as volunteers ready to educate, register voters, and assist the black population with the equality guaranteed them through the Constitution. This is the legacy of Freedom Summer. I've got to do this. This place is not what America promises. SNCC says this is what's going to bring change. People like me, Negroes, going out and registering to vote. Well, trying to register to vote. They say that my vote will not only change Mississippi for me, but for my children and for our future. Excuse me, ma'am, is this where I registered to vote?
Yes.
Well, how do I go about it?
Name?
Alice Robertson, R-O-B.
Do you think I don't know how to spell?
No, ma'am, I know you know how to
$2
spell.
for tax and purposes.
My husband, he makes $3 a day. $2 is a bit much to ask, but I gave her the money. I was going to register to vote.
Take this test. You have 10 minutes. Get one answer wrong and you fail. You can't vote. Your time starts now.
I opened the test and I was baffled. I read questions like, spell backwards forwards. Questions my high school education could not help me answer. And the thing was, even if I did get every single question right on this exam, my success or my failure was up to the woman administering the test. I never did get to register to vote that day, and I knew right then that we needed leadership in this state.
Excuse me, is this the Robertson residence? I'm Patty Miller, the volunteer from Iowa. I was signed up with your family for the summer project. Hi.
Patty Miller?
Yes,
Alice
hi.
Robertson, nice to meet you.
Nice
We
to
have your
meet you
room
too.
all ready.
Okay.
Come on, I'll have you meet the kids.
For 19 years of my life, I was segregated from the hardships in Mississippi. I am a junior at Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa, but Iowa and Mississippi are worlds apart. Mississippi is not a place that America should be proud of, and that's why I'm here. It was earlier this summer that I found a pamphlet on a bulletin board at my school for this project, and I thought that maybe I could be a leader. So I submitted my application, and after I was accepted, I traveled to Oxford, Ohio, to attend a week-long training session. COFO brought civil rights workers from Mississippi to speak with us, and it went a little something like this.
Doors on cars should be locked at all times. Yes, you, I don't want you going anywhere alone at night. In fact, I don't want you going anywhere at night.
Remove all necessary objects from cars that could be construed as weapons. I'm talking hammers, files, iron rules, no liquor bottles or beer cans.
Do not stand in the doorway at night with the light shining on your backs. You'd be surprised, but somebody is always watching. We're telling you right now that you might get spit in the face. What do?
You walk away.
You might get called a name. What do?
You walk away.
You might get hit. You might be harassed. If the situation arises, if someone comes up from behind you and starts wailing on you, you go limp. No violence.
June 21st, 1964. The first day of Freedom Summer and only the second day that I had been in Mississippi. Freedom Summer civil rights workers James Chaney, Michael Schwerner, and Andrew Goodman went missing. The disappearance of these three men caused a lot of national attention and a whole lot of fear. Because of their disappearance, President Johnson even called in the FBI. And while they were searching for these three men, 9 of their bodies were found. 9 African American bodies. 9 unjustified deaths.
Tied up in trees.
Floating in rivers.
Lying in ditches, 9 bodies.
44 days after these 3 men went missing, their bodies were found, buried in an earthen dam. The African American opinion regarding the FBI investigation was different than that of the white opinion.
I will forever be grateful for the whites that have come down to help us find our equality this summer, like my Patty. But I'm telling you right now that the only reason the FBI is here is because 2 of those men were white. Now, if all 3 of those men would have been Negroes, Johnson wouldn't have given a damn.
They questioned...
What about Emmett Till? 14 years old, murdered. Where was his investigation?
After these 3 men were found, a funeral was held on August 9, 1964. Dave Dennis, the director of CORE in Mississippi, spoke on behalf of these 3 men.
There are people who don't care. There are people who do care, but they don't have the guts to stand up for it. Then there are people down in places like Washington using my life and my freedom to play politics with. Now don't bow down anymore. Hold your heads up. We want our freedom now. I don't want to have to go to another memorial. I'm tired of funerals. I'm tired of them. We have got to stand up.
The disappearance of these 3 Freedom Summer civil rights workers opened the South and allowed people to look in. And as people were looking in, leadership was filling the state. Nearly 1,000 college students from the North had flooded in, looking to empower the oppressed in Mississippi. And the oppressed in Mississippi would soon be prepared to take the lead. Freedom schools were established in an effort to push forward African American youth to articulate their own desires and demands, while gaining a broader intellectual and academic experience.
The Freedom School curriculum had 5 components: supplementary education, cultural programs, political and social sciences, literature, and film. The overall theme of the Freedom School was to have the students become leaders as forces for social change within their own communities.
All right, students being about 1 month into Freedom School, I want you to answer this question for me, okay? And remember, raise your hands this time. Should African Americans leave Mississippi? Sandra.
No, Miss Miller. African Americans should not leave Mississippi. Before this summer, I didn't know that other schools had more than 1 typewriter for the entire class to share. I didn't know anything about African history. Now, before you came, I only knew the color of my skin, but now I know my story, and now I know I have to correct these wrongs. My first memory in life was that I was a Negro, or that I was colored, or that I was inferior to whites, but now I know differently, and now I know I'm going to change this so my children won't have to live like I have lived.
So what are you going to do about it? You say that you want change, but what are you going to do to be the change?
I'm going to stand up. I demand, desire, and deserve equality. I'm going to be a leader in this movement, Miss Miller. You know, the Negro is just as superior as any other race, and if the Negro can have a good education, he can make a big success as any man from any other race.
Freedom Summer civil rights workers were beaten.
Their homes and their churches were bombed.
Unjustified arrests took place.
3 civil rights workers were killed.
Effective leaders do not take on these risks through fear, intimidation, or title, but rather by building a consensus around a common goal. And this common goal was
shattering the social paralysis which kept African Americans from voting,
obtaining jobs,
or living safely in their own skin.
When Freedom Summer ended, the legacy for change was in place.
Freedom Summer was the driving force that led President Lyndon B. Johnson to signing the 1965 Voting Rights Act. And by 1969, Mississippi recorded 66.5% of African Americans registered to vote, a 10-fold increase. Students returned to school wearing one man, one vote buttons to show their commitment in continuing the legacies of Freedom Summer.
Fannie Lou Hamer, a vital leader in the project and also the vice chair of Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, spoke on behalf of the success of Freedom Summer.
There are people who want to change, but they haven't dared to come out and try and do something about it. But after the 1964 project, when all the young people came down for the summer, Negroes in the Delta began moving. It was the leadership of the common person, the 1,000 students who came to the South, working alongside the Mississippians for whom the change was meant.
As President Barack Obama said, change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time.
Freedom Summer represents the leaders who refuse to wait for some other person
or some other time
to begin this legacy of change. Thank you.